let's start off with the Ashley and Martin turning point, because on the weekend, Kini Naholo just went absolute beast mode for the Huracans to get that win over the line.
Yeah, look, it was an impressive Hurricanes performance across the board. It was hard for me, when we think about the concept of the Ashley and Martin turning point, who it could be. But I think that pick and go try through the middle from Kini Naholo really turned the game on its head. But it was also a number of carries in and around the breakdown, out on the edge, and I thought defensively he was really strong. We know the Canes, love that rush D, and he really put his body in the line of sight of key players or key game drivers of the Brumbies a number of times. And you just look at his stats: 14 carries, 13 of them went to ground, 160 running metres, 11 tackle breaks, 2 line breaks, 100% gain line on carries, which isn't that easy to do. Like, there's very rare that players get 100% over the gain line with every carry. And then, as I mentioned, I thought his defence was really strong. 7 of 8 tackles at 88% against a pretty strong and very fast edge from the Brumbies. So, yeah, completely deserving of the turning point. But I also think he may have injected a turning point in his season, and getting that consistency that he's been looking for. But also I think for the Canes, it's a turning point for them as well. We said the Blues and the Canes going into that weekend needed big results, and obviously the Blues fell short and the Canes really, I suppose, lifted. And yeah, I think we'll probably get into it a little bit later, but I think there's one very critical player that has brought the energy that the Canes were searching for.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, when we think about the turning point, Mark Tele'a could obviously be a big part of that for Kini Naholo, because when Mark Tele'a announced that he's leaving, obviously every winger around the country went, oh, there's a spot. There's a spot possibly available in the All Blacks. I mean, let's have a look at that and where Kini Naholo might stand within that. Obviously, we've got Caleb Clark, who's been out injured for a few weeks now, who was playing very well and you would think would walk back into that left wing spot. You've got Sevu Reece, who's also been playing well, you would think could probably be a starter in that right wing spot, especially if Will Jordan is at fullback. So where within the rest of the squad and what they're trying to achieve with their wingers is Kini Naholo likely to fall when you consider what Mark Tele'a brought to the squad? Yeah,
well, I think we've seen Mark on the left wing and play the role of left and right. And Caleb's that sort of left wing power winger, Kini sort of certainly fits the mould of that. And where potentially carrying 2 power wingers can work is with players like Ruben Love. Potentially having the ability to play on the edge, play at fullback, play at 10. And does that provide a spot that you carry a little bit less on the outside because of Rieko Ioane and the ability to play on the edge, that we may see other positions bolstered. So I don't think it's necessarily an automatic win for a winger as such because of the versatility of Will Jordan. Is it an opportunity to carry Stephen Petafeta still, or a younger 10, like a Josh Jacob, Taha Kemera, with Ruben Love also being able to provide cover in that 10 space. So I think there's a lot more complexity than just replacing Mark to consider. But if you looked at it from a winger specific, I think Ruben Love can play wing. I think Leroy Carter's knocking on the door. He's been very consistent, and he has the ability to play left and right and potentially fullback. We've seen him do that at Bay of Plenty. Shea Fihaki's coming into his own. He's been in the squad last season. And all these names that we mentioned, Caleb Tangatau obviously is another one, but I think they're going to need their teams to get into the finals to decide it. And you're going to have to play big games and big minutes and have a big impact like Kini Naholo did on a consistent basis through that final series.
You have to think that Tamatava Nawe also comes into that conversation as a player who can fit multiple spots in the squad, as a player who's a power winger when he needs to be. Obviously great over the ball and does all those other things really well, has a kicking game. Like, he is obviously probably in that conversation to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with, Geordie coming back and not necessarily needing to rush straight into 80 minutes. He's at a big load over there. His ability to play 12 and on the edge, fits a bench role, perfectly. We did see Quinn Tapia play on the wing for the All Blacks 15. So, he comes an option that's probably competing.
Yeah, if his knees are right? He could have an ACL.
Potentially. But I still think, if his knee is right, the poor old Chiefs are facing a few injuries at the moment. We've seen Anton Leonard-Brown as well play on the edge for the Chiefs. I know he's injured as well, but just best case scenario, there are players that have been selected in that midfield wing role that have represented the All Blacks previously. So again, I think the Highlanders, with the tough finish in, Tavatavanawa will need some opportunity on the edge, but also just need big performances that we saw at the start of the season.
For me, it's pretty obvious they blew their chance with Sean Stevenson, because the way he's playing, he probably could have been, when they picked Fiaki last year, that was probably blowing it with Sean Stevenson. He's gone. Yeah. Forget about Sean Stevenson. But Fiaki now is playing way better than he was when he got picked in the All Blacks. So when you say that, it's like, okay, well, they like him. We know they like him. We know he's got the boot. We've seen some exceptional speed from him, and we know they like him, and he's actually performing well now.
Yeah, and I think they trust him, which is a big thing. Trust is a big thing at that international level, that when the game's online, can you put a guy on? They have that trust in him. Versatility, again, I hate to go back to it, but when you're picking squads and you've got to cover, he does cover a lot of roles. Probably definitely not first five, but definitely anywhere in that back three. But he's playing the house down. It's just, can he cover the left wing? Because I feel like he's probably competing with his teammate and Severis, who can cover the left wing. Yeah. And I think the pieces of the puzzle that are key is what I mentioned before, is where they're at with the 10s, where they're at the 15s, and what 15s can play wing.
I really like your point about Ruben Love, because he did come on against Japan on the wing, didn't he? But when we think about guys who've been great wingers over the years for the All Blacks, the likes of, let's say, Corey Jane. Yeah. Great under the high ball, great kicking game, great running game, has a good understanding of how to work in that pendulum at the back. All of those things. We haven't seen a lot of Ruben Love on the wing, but in the past we've seen Geordie Barrett get thrown on the wing because of his understanding of those elements. He seems like a really interesting prospect out there.
But the beauty of it, we've got a long history of guys that probably play fullback for their super clubs start on the wing because there's just less pressure. Yeah. There's a lot on a 15. That 10-15 access is massive pressure. I think I can even think moving out of the midfield, Richard Kahui played a lot on the right wing. Ben Smith, obviously, Izzy Dag. All these guys started on the wing and then eventually got their time at 15. And I think Ruben Love fits that mould perfectly because he's got the speed, he's got the skill set, and as we're seeing with a lot of the super sides that are doing well around kick strategy, kicking from the edge is a real weapon now, and it's a real way to manipulate that backfield, because if you are not going to come up, he has the ability of the old Jeff Wilson chip and chase and that instinctive play. And I think that the way he's performed at 10, and if he can get the Hurricanes into the finals, I think he's one of the names that you would expect to be read out.
The other person who's been around the All Blacks but got dropped quite quickly was Amoni Narawa. He played last year and then suddenly was gone. Whenever he touches the ball, he looks electric right now. I wonder what he has to do to get back in that conversation.
Yeah, look, I think he's a player that definitely can, again, be the power winger, because he just is very slippery, but he's also got the ability to go over the top and the right wing spot.
And he can play fullback.
He can, he's played a lot of fullback. Yeah. But the other thing is he actually impressed at centre for Bay of Plenty. I felt like he went back to NPC to say, hey, I can cover a few roles here. So I think he started convincing selectors to definitely take him serious. And I know I sound like a broken record every time at this year, but big performances, big games, you need your teams to get in the, either semi-finals or grand finals. Yeah. And you've got to play a game that people step back and go, wow, and that's how you'll present yourself when you've got, because as we've just spoken about, 10 players.
That's right.
Are not all getting picked.
But some of them are in the Chiefs and Crusaders. And when we look back, and it's quite interesting that in the history of Super Rugby, only 2 teams have ever won Super Rugby from outside the top 2. That is the 99 Crusaders and the 2015 Highlanders. So when you look at that and you look at the way the table looks, given the Reds have a game in hand, but the way the table looks right now, the Chiefs and the Crusaders are in a position to put the likes of Fihaki and Narawa and Carter in better positions to get selected, aren't they?
Absolutely. And even the midfield with Anton Leonard-Brown and Quinta Pai, they come into their edge if they're fit and available. So I just think with this home advantage, it's becoming very evident now as the competition gets a little bit tighter. it's pretty hard to win away from home. So I think if you can finish in that top 2, you definitely give yourself a realistic chance of going to the big dance. And then once you're in that top 2 and in that final, I think there's a number of examples where even though the home side gets to that final, has the ability on the occasion to deliver and step up.
So let me chuck in a Smokey, because it's not like it's a big enough list. But how good would AJ Lamb be wearing the number 23 jersey? The ability to cover the midfield and the wing, great impact player, strong presence on the ball and off the ball.
I think he's in great form. You know, I think 12, he's come to life. The moment he's been moved into 12, he just seems to love that position, but it also suits his natural instincts and his power game, but also suits him defensively. And we've seen enough of him on the wing. So a great Smokey that has played All Blacks 15, has been called into the All Blacks squad, as well as like a Shea Fihaki. So again, a player that potentially, if the Blues can slip into the finals or have a big end, it's a like-for-like comparison again to like a Tavatavanawa or a midfielder that can play on the end.